I'm here today with Chris Potter, who's the Chief Operations Officer of Finance and Administrative Services. I want to thank you all for coming today. Our goal is to give you a briefing on what's taking place at Fire Station 31. It's very important. I want to start off by saying I think we all understand and recognize that firefighters have an extremely difficult job each and every day that they come in to serve this community and the communities around us. And it's important that we have a workspace that's safe and free from those harms in the workspace that they're in. That's very important. We've been working with Mayor Durkin, and I do want to thank Mayor Durkin for her ongoing support and her belief in the work that our firefighters do each and every day, so we can come up with a plan to try to understand what's going on. So over the weekend, Local 27 made the department aware that they had done some additional testing at Fire Station 31, and that revealed some results that caused concern. Since we did not have clarity and understanding of how to interpret and how to read the results in light of the history at Fire Station 31, the city, the mayor's office, and our labor union, working with President Kenny Stewart, we decided that it was probably best to move the firefighters out of Fire Station 31 until we understood what was actually taking place. As you all are aware, over the last 15 or 16 years, Fire Station 31 has been in the news for health concerns. So the last thing we wanted is to have our firefighters working in an environment that can cause them harm if we had information. So what's taken place? On Monday, we put together a plan to transition our firefighters into the surrounding facilities, and that was very important. As you know, over the last 15 or 20 years, we rebuilt, remodeled, or seismically retrofitted all of the stations in the Seattle Fire Department, so we knew how to turn that wheel and relocate our companies. We'd never done it this fast in the past. Clearly, in 24 hours, we relocated 4 fire companies, but it was important for their safety. So what we did was we relocated Engine 31 to Station 17, which is in the University District. We relocated Ladder 5 to Station 39, which is in Lake City. We relocated Aid 31 to Station 24, which is at 130th in Greenwood. And we relocated Medic 31 to Station 35. So that's important. So basically, geographically, that is north, south, east, and west. But that district is also receiving additional coverage from those other surrounding stations. It's important to note that. We know there's challenges when we relocate the stations and those units to the surrounding companies. We clearly understand that that means that there could be a gap or a delay in coverage. That's very important, and we recognize that. With that being said, for the last 2 days, we have been monitoring response times, paying attention to what was going on, and the firefighters themselves, I can't give them enough credit and thanks on this topic. When I went and visited Station 17s, 39s, and 24s this morning, those firefighters all confirmed to me that during the business day, they have been spending time in their districts. They're doing training in their districts. They're doing building inspections in their districts. So if those calls come into 31's district during the business day, they are in those districts. I know they're not there 24/7, but until we solve this problem, we are all working hard to understand this. So there's challenges ahead. So what have we done on the testing front when we moved our firefighters out of Station 31? On Tuesday morning, the first company came in, NVL Labs, to do the first round of testing. What they did was an air filtering test throughout the station, and for lack of a better term, because I'm not a scientist, a sticky tape type test. So they did 2 forms of testing throughout the station to try to understand what was going on in the environment. We also have testing going on today as we speak for a vacuum type of test from the same company, and then we're bringing in a secondary vendor called Kester on Friday to do another follow-up round of testing. So one thing we want is to be sure that the environment is safe for our firefighters that work at Fire Station 31s before we reoccupy the facility. That's very important. The last thing we want is our firefighters to be concerned about the environment that they're sleeping in and working in and training in to be a hazardous space. So we're working hard to try to find answers to give to them. We have been in constant partnership with the mayor's office, with our local, and with all of our firefighters in the department. So now I would like to open it up for questions, if you have any questions for Chris or myself.
Do you have any sense of how long we will be in other situations?
Right now we don't. It's going to depend on how fast the results come back from all the different tests that are going on. You know, I wish I could answer that question, but it's kind of a two-sided question. I mean, if you think about that, if the results come back and from any of these tests that aren't good, we have a different question to ask on how do we solve the problem, how do we remediate the problem before we reoccupy. That's important. But the front side that we're all hoping for is all the tests come back and everything is within normal limits for an indoor environment that people are living in. And that's what we're working through right now.
What are your response times, what you're seeing and what your concerns are in terms of how long you get?
Absolutely. Our concerns about response times didn't just happen 2 days ago. They happen every single day. It's something that we pay attention to. You know, in order for us to be effective, we have to get there and do a good job. Whether it's a medical emergency, whether it's a fire emergency. We know in fire we're facing a time temperature curve on how fast fire spreads. We know in a medical emergency we have a defined period of time when we can deliver that care. So it just didn't start 2 days ago. It's something that we're paying attention to. Over the last 48 hours, we have been paying attention, you know, to the response times and calls and things like that. And right now, what we expect, and just running analysis from years past, it could be up to a minute longer because they're responding from surrounding jurisdictions. So if they're in quarters at one of these other locations, the response time could be up to a minute longer for BLS and those type of responses. If they are in their district doing training, doing building inspections, doing building familiarizations, clearly it's in their district, those response times would be pretty much the same as they would be if they were working from that district. But that's something that we're paying attention to. That's something that the firefighters are paying attention to. One thing you need to know is these firefighters care. They're passionate about what they do. They're here to serve the community. So just as much as we're concerned about this, they're also concerned about this.
Can you talk specifically about what new information you got over the weekend that caused you to pull the trigger on this and go ahead and relocate the firefighters?
Absolutely. It was a relationship with mold and mycotoxins. And those are two things that I'm not a scientist and I can't go into great detail about, but there was levels presented to us that presented us a concern that caused us to do all of these things. So those are two things that obviously they can call respiratory issues and other immunodeficiencies and things like that. So what have we been doing? We've been communicating with public health. We've been communicating with everyone who can help us inform us about this, with the testing companies, so they can give us information and try to understand. We've been pulling information from Department of Health, from CDC, the World Health Organization, on these topics so we can try to understand it. So we're leaving it up to the experts to give us the best information so we can make a good decision when that time comes.
How high are those levels?
I can't speak to the specific numbers. You know, I don't know a number that crosses a threshold or not, but our goal is to find where that threshold is within normal limits for an occupied space. And once we land that plane, then we'll be able to talk about the next steps.
Have the city done that specific testing in the past?
We haven't, yes. So over the last 15 years, the city has tested Fire Station 31 a number of times on a variety of issues. But related to mold, in two of the battery tests in that 15 years, in 2004 and 2016, the mold tests were performed as a part of those battery of tests. And both of those results came back within normal limits of a space that's occupied. So not sure what's changed in the environment, but we all understand we live in the Northwest. It's a lot of a high moisture content, and I've learned that mold is everywhere in the environment over the last week. I've learned that mycotoxins are everywhere in the environment. But what are those levels that cause us concern? That's what we want to know before we have our firefighters reoccupy that space.
Have you actually seen Local 27's testing?
I've seen some of it, yes.
Yeah. And so you verify on your own that those levels were at a concern?
We have sent those reports to be looked at by people who can understand the words, the graphics, the charts, the percentages that are on those pages. And it's important that we get this right.
It sounds like the union has been making these concerns known since the early 2000s, as you just previously alluded to. So what took so long to close the station?
Well, that's an interesting question because I believe the city has been responsive. We've been working hard to partner with Local 27. This is a different issue on mold. We've been working hard to understand the cancer in the Seattle Fire Department. That's what we've been focused on. So this is a little bit different than the studies that we've been doing. Right now we have an ongoing study where we're studying cancer rates in the Seattle Fire Department for every firefighter who's worked here all the way back to 1973 to understand what have been the cancer rates in the Seattle Fire Department. So that is the avenue that we have been focused on. That is the consistent battery of tests that we have been running. Mold was tested in 2016 and 2004, as I mentioned, but that other test, that battery of tests have been focused on cancer.
So how many, does this station have a higher rate of cancer than other stations?
We don't know that yet. That's why we're partnering and we're doing this study right now. We expect the results to be back in early 2020 and to be able to answer that question. And that's a very detailed study that you have to go through all the cancer registries, through all the different states, that all the different firefighters have possibly moved to, through the national registries. You have to get permission to access those records. So it's very complicated, and we've been working hard with Fred Hutch and in partnership with Local 27 to try to answer that question. We want to know that answer too.
Well, there has been a focus, right? You said in the last 15 years there's been a concern whether there's any tangible evidence. There's been kind of what people are saying might be connected to that station, or just like a history of that station in the last 15 years.
Well, there's a concern, but there's a concern with firefighters in general. As you can imagine, when our firefighters go in to fight a fire with all the synthetics and different building materials that are inside of each structure each and every day, the plastics, the wiring, the electronics, all that burns differently. All that off gases differently. And what you normally see is when our firefighters go in, they're masked up, but they have all their gear on. All that is getting into the gear. And then after they get outside, the off-gassing starts. So all of those things happen. Incomplete combustion of a diesel engine. This is something that the whole fire service is concerned about and that we're paying attention to.
But just from my understanding, the focus has been on that station, with all of that you're saying, and there has been concerns raised, and you mentioned we tested in the early 2000s several times, and we never found anything.
At least 5 times.
Right. And so there has been that concern from outside organizations saying that station is a problem. You guys have done the due diligence, is what I'm hearing you say, and this is the first time in the history of these concerns where there's been any kind of tangible evidence found in regards to mold.
Regards to mold, absolutely. And we're going to continue to try to root this out until we have clarity and understanding of what it is and what it isn't. That's important.
You went to the mayor and brought these concerns, or I guess earlier in the week you spoke to the mayor. What was your conversation like with her? How did she react?
The mayor's number one concern is for our firefighter safety, just as it is for every employee and every member of this community. She expressed that. And that's her number one concern. I knew that going in, but that's what she led with. Let's make sure that we have a safe space, a safe environment for our firefighters to work in. That's her number one concern, which is why we're doing all of this.
And she was aware of the history of that station.
Oh yeah. If you've been around Seattle for any period of time, I think most are aware of the history. So as we get more information, our goal will be to keep you informed. I know Kristen's going to be giving you some information as we wrap up here today. And as I started, I want to thank our firefighters for the hard work they do each and every day serving this community. It means a lot. They put their lives on the line every time they roll out the door with lights and sirens. The last thing we want is to have a workspace that causes them concern when they come in to serve the community. Thank you.
Before you go, one question about response times. You already touched on it a lot with what you're doing, but that station is one of the busiest in the city, correct?
That station is one of the busiest in the city.
So you've kind of sent the resources to each area of Seattle, you said south, east, and west, correct?
Well, actually, I should have provided clarity.
Okay.
The districts around 31.
Okay.
So all the districts around 31 is where those resources are. And the companies that also border 31s, where those resources aren't, are also paying attention to what's going on here. So they're not in South Seattle, they're not in West Seattle,
Right.
They're all bordering Station 31's district.
So as far as dispatching with those resources that were in that station, are they on hold for calls that would have been where that station was answering, or will they go on calls for where they're now located? So I guess the question is, you know, how are you guys addressing, you've already touched on it, but for folks who have more questions, how are you addressing what is now a hole in the area?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we're very fortunate that we have firefighters in our dispatch center who understand the lay of the land, who understand the nature of the calls that are coming in, who are monitoring the situation daily.
Right.
That's one of the things that they're paying attention to. On any given day, we could have training going on, we can have an incident happening around the city that could pull 6, 8, 12, 15 units out of service. We are also constantly moving our resources around the city just on a normal day. So this is something that they're used to doing. So I trust the work that they do every day. They're amazing in making sure that we have coverage around the city. And I expect that they're doing the same thing right now.
What you guys have seen in the short 48 hours, it's a 60-second delay as of right now.
No, that's the analysis that we've run from the last year's worth of data on what those surrounding units response times were to go into 31s.
Okay.
We're 2 days into this, so we're going to probably need a little more information to understand what it is and what it isn't.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Here's the document. This was provided by NPL.
Not sure which one is yours.
Yours.
Yep.